Hello everyone, this is my first video. My name is Quaestus, and I want to talk about something that has been lingering in my mind lately. Not really lingering, it's actually been at the forefront. It's been kind of bothering me. And what's been bothering me is the fact that our society views human sacrifice as such a repulsive and primitive and backwards thing to do. If you look back in history, for instance, you look at societies like, I think it was the Mayans or the Aztecs, and they would perform human sacrifice, and that just repels us. We find it to be such a disgusting thing, an immoral thing to do, to sacrifice someone to a god. And obviously, we think of that god as evil, like in the case of Baal. And back in the past, we had the Aztecs, and they would sacrifice a man or a woman, some unlucky man or woman, at the top of a ziggurat, and blood would be streaming down the stairs, this great river of blood, and there would be the crowds, and they'd be cheering on some priest at the top of the ziggurat, who would hold some stone and knife high up into the sky, yelling out to his god and asking him to accept this sacrifice. And then he'd plunge the knife down into someone's chest and carve out their heart, and then rip it out and show it to the crowds and to whatever sky god that was looking down upon them. And they would see the heart beating and blood streaming down it, and these horrifying rivulets of blood. And then you look back in the past, for instance, in the Bible, the worshippers of Baal, the golden calf. And they would make sacrifices to these gods in the form of babies, and they would cast their babies into the fire, and the babies would burn alive. And this was looked upon by the Israelites as something that was so immoral and terrible, and they would kill over it, and they would kill the Ammonites and the Canaanites and the Philistines, because these people were so immoral, and they were terrible people, and they were pawns of Satan. And as a Christian society, and it's not really, it's the trend of Christianity, it seems to be lacking in America now, but we look at that and we say, what an awful, backward, disgusting society. That is such an immoral thing to do. But I think we should take a deeper, closer look into the God that Christians worship. In fact, most people worship, but right now we're just going to be looking at Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim, Adonai, whatever you want to call the God of the Bible, Lord. And I think we should actually take a good look at the God of the Bible. Because in reading the Bible, I have not found anything in the Bible ever truly forgiven without some kind of blood sacrifice. And I know it sounds absolutely astounding. The God of the Bible, the Lord, is supposed to be this moral, benevolent, loving God who forgive you out of the goodness of his heart and show you mercy. That term, that word, mercy, is thrown about in the Bible so much. God is such a merciful God. And I'm making the case in this video that I beg to differ. The God of the Bible is actually a very vindictive, very demanding God. There's always has to be some recompense. And I'm going to make my point. Here we go. I'm going to start off. For instance, let's look at Adam and Eve. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning. Now, Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and bad, and so did Eve, and in so doing, they disobeyed God. What was the punishment for their disobedience? It was death. Could Adam and Eve beg for the forgiveness of God and say, please, we're sorry that we did this. We're sorry that we disobeyed you. We don't want to die. Would that work? No. Yahweh said in the Bible that The end of sin is always death. He that sins shall surely die. That is the debt that needs to be paid. If you sin, you must die. And die they did. Adam and Eve returned to the dust. And in so doing, their debts were repaid. That's what it says in the Bible. If you sin against God, if you make one mistake in your life, the only way to repay that debt to God is to die, is to cease to exist. Now let's go a little bit forward. Let's look at Abraham and Isaac. Now Abraham was asked by Yahweh to prove his loyalty to Jehovah, or Yahweh, to sacrifice his son. And in the Bible, it says quite clearly that if you have an intent to do something, if you have that thought in your brain and you're about to do it, and Jesus even went a bit further. He said that if you look at a woman with the intent to have immorality with her, to lay with her, to commit adultery with her, then if you're just thinking those things, that it is no different than actually doing them. So we know that Yahweh has this rule that if you have the intent to do something, even if you're stopped, it's no different than you already did it. And Abraham was going to do it. He was going to sacrifice Isaac. He had put him upon that pyre. He had lit that fire. He was going to stab his son, and so doing, sacrifice him to Yahweh. But by Yahweh's own standards, Abraham actually did it. So Yahweh doesn't really have a problem with blood sacrifice. It's just that people, if you look in the Bible, that people had a purpose to fulfill. And I'm going to take this one step. Let's go a little bit further into history. And let's speed up the time a little bit, and let's go to the case of David and Bathsheba. Now, David, if you guys don't know the story, was a king of Israel. And one night, he was looking out, and he saw a woman bathing. And her name was Bathsheba, and she must have had a really nice body, all the right curves, because upon seeing her, he became so enthralled with her beauty that he called her to his residence, and he proceeded to have sex with her, and he impregnated her. And to make her his wife, he sent her husband to the front lines to fight. And of course, he was killed in action. He was put in the very front so that he would die and that David could claim his wife as his own. Now, Yahweh, being the moral pillar that he is, sent his prophet to David and said, "Because you have done this terrible thing, you are going to die." And David grew fearful, and he repented, and he was gnashing his teeth, and he was flinging himself against the wall, and he was crying and moaning out to God, and he was begging God to forgive him, to spare him. And Yahweh heard this, and he sent his prophet back to David, and he said, "Because you have shown such repentance, Yahweh will not take your life." And David said, "Oh, thank you, thank you." But the prophet stopped him short. He said, "No, but your son is going to die. Your firstborn son is going to die." And David again moaned, and he ripped his clothes, and he gnashed his teeth, and he cried out to God, but it did no good. His son died. After his son was born, it was struck with an illness by Yahweh, and it lingered on for 7 days, and then it died. And you read the story, you think, what the hell was going on there? How could you punish an innocent baby for the sins of the father? Well, what you don't understand here is, dear listener, is that there was a price to be paid. David had sinned against God, and he, by Israel's laws, should have been stoned to death. Any Israelite that committed adultery, immorality like that, by law, was stoned to death. He would have died. So instead of David dying, the cost was put upon the baby. The baby had to die for that debt to be paid. And the reason why was because David was to be the ancestor of Jesus. There was a bloodline that needed to be fulfilled. Through David's genes, through his family, Jesus was going to be born. So in order to have David serve his purpose, Yahweh kept him alive, and so the baby had to take on that debt and die. Okay, so now I've given you 3 different examples, right? So now let's go to Jesus, right? Let's go to Jesus. Jesus, and the thought is this: Jesus had to die, had to sacrifice himself for all imperfect humans, everywhere across all spans of time. And the reason for this is because every human is born into sin. And every human, therefore, must die. Because the wages of sin is death. If you sin, the only way to pay back that debt, that sin, you do something bad, you have to pay a fine. In our society, you commit murder, you have to be incarcerated. In some cases, yes, you do have to pay with your life, which is execution. So, in the case of Yahweh, if you sin against him, tiniest little sin, you steal something, you punch your brother in the face as a child, I'm sorry, it's not going to be forgiven. You're going to die, because the wages of sin is death. Even eating an apple, Adam and Eve, death. That's the wages of going against God, even in a tiny, minuscule amount, is death. That's the wage that needs to be paid, and this is for people across all spans of time. And I know this is not exactly accurate, because the Bible says we're born into sin, which I don't understand at all, because that's basically corruption of blood. It's completely immoral, because you should be punished for the deeds that you do. But essentially, in the Bible, it says we're born into sin, so therefore we have to die. But it's also, but there's also the rule: if you sin against God, even in the most minuscule way, you have to pay with your life. So the thought is that Jesus, this perfect human, if he sacrificed himself, if he paid the debt for all of us, then we could live forever and have eternal life with the Creator. See, because a perfect human life is so much more valuable than all of the humans that have lived, all the imperfect humans that have lived up to now and will continue to exist into the future. Imperfect human lives are worth nothing, almost nothing to Yahweh. In terms of value, in terms of the cost of a human life. If you look at it, Jesus, one human being, one life, is worth more than all the billions of people on this planet right now, and all the billions and millions of people have lived in the past and will live in the future. Okay, now knowing this, let's examine a little bit more, because we always say, oh, this was a gift, this was merciful. Yahweh gave us the gift of Jesus, right? But Yahweh was not forgiving us out of his heart. Yahweh has never ever said somewhere in the Bible, oh, you did this thing to me, oh, you committed this sin, you're repentant, oh, I'll forgive you out of the goodness of my heart because I'm a benevolent, I'm a merciful God. No. Every single human being that has ever lived has died. Every single one, no exception. And that is because, according to the Bible, they had to pay the debt with their lives. They sinned, they have to die. It doesn't matter if Yahweh said somewhere in the Bible, oh, you repented, I forgive you in this little span of time, so you don't have to die now. But you are going to die sometime, because there is a debt to be paid. So you see, Yahweh's never really actually forgiven anyone. You see what I'm getting at? There always has to be a debt that has to be paid. And in this case, The blood sacrifice was Jesus Christ. You see, Yahweh demands retribution. The Lord demands retribution. He is a God of blood. He is a God of human sacrifice. Be it for a small sin, you say you steal something, say you accidentally murder somebody, or it's not really accidental murder, you accidentally kill somebody. In the Old Testament, you have to sacrifice a few lambs, maybe, and sometimes you have to pay with your life. You have to pay back sevenfold. Sometimes you have to pay it twice back, right? There always is a cost. There's no forgiveness with God. There is no mercy with Yahweh. There's only the purpose and all the things that Yahweh has to do in order to fulfill that purpose. So, Jesus committed suicide knowingly. Yahweh was an assistant to suicide. He was a collaborator in that suicide, which was actually a human sacrifice on behalf of all humans everywhere. So what's the point I'm getting to? The point I'm getting to is that as a society, or at least Christians in this society, don't really understand that the God that they're worshiping. Because we look at Satan, we look at Lucifer, we look at Baal, we look at the gods of the Aztecs worship, we look at Norwegian gods, we look at all these different gods that people had to give sacrifices to, and we say, oh, what a horrible system! What barbarism! How immoral! And then they go to church, and they worship a God who demands a sacrifice. And that sacrifice can only be paid by human sacrifice. It's really something to think about. It's something to think about because it makes you think everything you've been taught is wrong. That's something that, it's this meme on the internet. Everything you've been taught is wrong. And it's actually true. Everything we've been taught is wrong. Because the primary God that's supposed to be this bastion of good and morality, he's a God who demands human sacrifice. Think about this. And I'm sorry if I have to try to reiterate my point. And it's I know. Hats off to whoever's still listening to this, but the reason why I have to do that is because, I do go to church. I mean, I don't worship, but it's for the community. It's for the people. But I try to talk to my parents, to my neighbors, to my friends, to my people at school. I talk to them about this. I talk to them about ideas about this because I've read the whole Bible. I've looked at all the commentaries because I wanted to find out the truth for myself. And I talk to them about this. I present to them the logic and the evidence. But you see, for spiritual people, and spiritualism is nothing but nationalism for Jesus. It's just nationalism. So you're basically taking them out of this high because religion is kind of like a drug for them. It gives them some kind of structure, some security, some peace of mind in their lives. And I don't blame them because believing in a higher power than yourself does give you a lot of security, and it makes you feel good. So I tell them all this. I kind of tear them out of this womb. I tear them out of this high. I bring them back down, and they come crashing down. And I tell them, and I say, the God that you worship is actually pretty immoral. I don't think there's anything such thing as a benevolent God, and I think you're living a lie. And I present them all the facts and the evidence, and I'm very nice about it. And then they realize for just one little moment, it snaps in the brain, it connects, and then all of a sudden they get this feeling of being abandoned and lost, and the world seems so cruel to them. And say, oh my God, this feeling, they have to go back to church, they have to get their high, they have to get back on that drug. They're getting these side effects. They're getting withdrawal symptoms. So they go back in church and they listen to it and I'm back, okay? Man, you scared me for a second. I thought I'd have to take responsibility for my own life, and I thought I would have to follow life by logic and reason and evidence, but no. I'm back. I got that high, yes. Preacher man, just keep on telling me, Tell me everything's gonna be all right. Tell me that God's forgiving. Tell me everything that I've read in the book. This book is true. So I have to reiterate my points, and I have to reiterate. I have to bring them back out. I have to, again, it's kind of, they sink back in. It's kind of like quicksand. They sink back in. I pull them back out. They start sinking again. I have to pull them back out. And it's not worth my time. I know it's not. But I interact with these people all the time. So why the hell not? Why the hell not? Just stir up some fire. I want to see that spark. I want to see that flicker in people's brains. But yeah, this has been my point. The point is that as society, as at least the Christian society, it's hypocritical, right? It's hypocritical to look back at these societies and look at, for instance, even it was hypocritical for the Israelites to say this and say, look at the Ammonites, look at the Philistines, look at the Canaanites, look at them sacrificing their children to Molech, Baal, and Molech, and Baal, and even the Babylonian and Assyrian cultures, But look at your own God. He demands human sacrifice from everybody, just not in the form that seems so egregious, like stabbing someone in the heart or burning your baby at the flames. No, he'll eventually die. We understand that dying from old age and from sickness is natural, but according to the Bible, it says that Yahweh put this as a punishment upon us. So there you go. That was my point. Thank you for listening to my first video, and if you guys have anything else you want me to talk about, just put a request down in the comment section. As always, I'd like everybody to like and subscribe if they listen to this video. I'm giving you guys some value. Maybe you guys felt this snap in your brain, this something that just made your eyes light, your eyes go wide open, and some light that just came on in your head. If I did that, pay back with a subscribe, pay back with a like. That's all I ask for, Hit the bell button. Hit the bell button so that you'll get updates on what I'm posting. But anyways, this has been Quaestus. Thank you again for listening, and I'll be back with another video, I don't know, maybe in a few days. Maybe an hour, who knows. I might think something up. If something just jumps into my head, I might start talking about it. Alright, so you guys, again, have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.